Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Imagine you're out for a nice dinner. You look across the restaurant and you see your best friend's spouse. But they aren't alone. They're laughing, holding hands, and sharing a deeply romantic moment with a complete stranger. Your heart drops. In an instant, you are caught in a nightmare scenario. What do? Do you speak up and risk shattering their marriage? Or do you stay silent and live with the guilt of a lie? This is the exact situation our main character faces in today's story, The Cheating Witness. Over the next 10 chapters, we're going to explore how real people navigate this agonizing moral dilemma, deal with the shock of confrontation, and handle the emotional fallout when a friendship is pushed to its absolute limits. As we follow this intense real-life drama, you're also going to master advanced practical English vocabulary and native expressions used for handling difficult conversations, setting strict boundaries, and talking about trust. Grab a notebook, pay close attention to how the characters express their emotions, and let's dive straight into Chapter 1, The Double Take.
The ambient chatter of the Velvet Bistro usually brought a sense of calm after a grueling work week, but tonight it offered no comfort. Chloe stared at her menu, though her eyes weren't scanning the dinner options. Her gaze was locked on a cozy booth near the back of the restaurant, partially obscured by a large indoor palm tree. Sitting there was Garrett. There was no mistaking the sharp jawline, the tailored navy jacket, or the distinct booming laugh that occasionally echoed above the soft jazz playing in the background. But Garrett wasn't having a business dinner. He was leaned across the candlelit table, his fingers intertwined with those of a woman with long, cascading red hair. She definitely wasn't Vanessa, Chloe's best friend since college. Chloe watched, paralyzed, as Garrett reached up to gently wipe a stray strand of hair from the woman's face. The intimacy of the gesture was undeniable. It wasn't a casual meeting. It was a romantic tryst. A wave of nausea washed over Chloe. Her stomach churned as a knot of anxiety tightened in her chest. Her first instinct was to storm over, slam her hands on the mahogany table, and demand an explanation. But looking around the crowded room, Chloe forced himself to take a deep breath. A public scene would only make things worse. Trembling, Chloe paid her bill without ordering food and slipped out into the cool night air. The drive home was a blur of flashing streetlights and racing thoughts. How long had this been going on? How could Garrett do this to Vanessa? Worst of all, Chloe realized the agonizing burden now resting on her shoulders. Chloe stared at her bedroom ceiling, watching the shadows stretch across the white plaster as the hours ticked away. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and sleep felt like a distant, impossible luxury. Every time she closed her eyes, the image of Garrett's hand intertwined with that stranger's flashed vividly in her mind. The agonizing burden of the secret was already taking a physical toll on her. Her head throbbed with a dull ache, and a heavy weight seemed to press down directly on her chest. How was she supposed to act normal around Vanessa when she was carrying a bomb that could obliterate Vanessa's entire world? Vanessa and Garrett had been married for 4 years, a relationship Chloe had always viewed as a blueprint for true love. They talked about buying a house in the suburbs, about starting a family, about growing old together on a porch somewhere. If Chloe spoke up, she would be the one to pull the trigger on all those beautiful dreams. She pulled her blanket tightly around her shoulders, shivering despite the warmth of the room. A nagging voice in her head whispered that maybe she should just mind her own business and stay completely out of it. After all, relationships were complex, and meddling in another couple's marriage rarely ended well for the outsider. But then she thought of Vanessa's bright, fierce loyalty, the way Vanessa had stood by her through every major crisis in her own life.
True friendship wasn't about keeping the peace. It was about protecting the person you love from a devastating lie. Remaining silent didn't feel like staying neutral. It felt like actively participating in Garrett's betrayal. When the morning sun finally broke through the blinds, Chloe sat up, her eyes bloodshot, and her decision still unmade.
The upbeat pop music playing from the backyard speakers felt completely out of place given the dread knotting Chloe's stomach. She stood on Vanessa and Garrett's patio holding a sweating glass of lemonade that she hadn't even tasted. When Vanessa had sent a text inviting her over for a spontaneous Sunday barbecue, Chloe had desperately tried to concoct an excuse to get out of it. But a sudden cancellation would have raised red flags, so here she was, trapped in the eye of the storm. "Chloe, you made it!" Vanessa cried, jogging up the lawn with a bright smile and wrapping her arms around her best friend. Chloe squeezed back, but her body felt rigid, paralyzed by a wave of intense guilt. Over Vanessa's shoulder, Chloe saw Garrett standing by the grill, casually flipping burgers and laughing with a neighbor. He looked incredibly relaxed, wearing a crisp polo shirt as if he hadn't just been cheating on his wife less than 48 hours ago. The sheer hypocrisy of it made Chloe's blood run cold. "Are you feeling okay?" Vanessa asked, stepping back and examining Chloe's face with genuine concern. "You look a little pale." "Oh, I'm just a bit worn out from a stressful week at the office," Chloe lied, her voice tight as she avoided direct eye contact. Just then, Garrett walked over, wiping his hands on a dish towel and offering Chloe a warm, completely normal greeting. "Hey, Chloe, glad you could drop by," he said smoothly, putting an arm around Vanessa's waist and kissing the top of her head. Chloe watched Vanessa lean into his touch with absolute, unwavering trust, completely oblivious to the betrayal. The sight of it made Chloe physically ill, forcing her to look away before her face gave away the terrible truth. Every second spent pretending nothing was wrong felt like a knife twisting deeper into her own conscience.
The cozy, quiet booth at their favorite downtown coffee shop usually felt like a safe haven for Chloe and Vanessa. Today, however, the aroma of roasted coffee beans and pastry sugar did nothing to soothe Chloe's frayed nerves. She watched Vanessa happily stir a spoonful of sugar into her vanilla latte, completely unaware of the trap Chloe was trying to navigate. Chloe needed to know if Vanessa already suspected something, or if Garrett's deception was completely airtight. "So," Chloe began, keeping her voice casual as she wrapped her hands around her warm mug for comfort, "how have things really been at home lately?" Vanessa looked up, a bit surprised by the sudden question, but she smiled warmly. "Good, I think. Why do you ask?" "Oh, no reason," Chloe lied smoothly, taking a slow sip to buy herself a few precious seconds of thinking time. "You just mentioned last week that Garrett was working a lot of late nights, and I know how stressful that can get for both of you." Vanessa's smile faded slightly, replaced by a subtle, fleeting shadow of doubt that didn't escape Chloe's watchful eyes. "Yeah, he has been putting in a lot of overtime at the firm," Vanessa sighed, tracing the rim of her porcelain cup. "He says they are wrapping up a massive quarterly project, so he is often unreachable until past midnight." Chloe felt a sharp pang of anger shoot through her chest, knowing exactly what Garrett was actually doing during those late nights. "Do you ever worry about him?" Chloe pressed gently, trying to push just a little further without completely breaking her promise to herself. "Like, do you feel like he's still fully present when he actually is at home?" Vanessa paused, looking down at the table as if weighing her own private thoughts, before shaking her head. "He's exhausted, Chloe, but he still tries. I trust him completely. Marriage is all about adjusting to those busy seasons, right?" Hearing the word trust spoken with such absolute certainty felt like a physical blow to Chloe's chest. The test was over,
and the results were devastating. Vanessa was completely blind to the betrayal, leaving the full weight of the truth entirely on Chloe's shoulders.
The stark, fluorescent lighting of the Daily Grind Cafe felt harsh and clinical, the perfect setting for an interrogation. Chloe sat at a corner table, her eyes locked on the entrance as the glass door swung open, triggering a sharp chime. Garrett walked in, glancing around before spotting her and heading over with a look of mild amusement. "Hey, Chloe, Vanessa said you wanted to meet up, but she didn't know what it was about," he said, pulling out a chair. "Is everything okay?" Chloe didn't smile, nor did she offer a polite greeting. She simply leaned forward, her gaze cutting through his relaxed demeanor. "Sit down, Garrett. We need to talk about what happened on Thursday night at the Velvet Bistro," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Garrett froze mid-air, his body stiffening for a split second before he forced himself to sit down and cover his reaction with a hollow chuckle. "What are you talking about? I was at the office late on Thursday, working on the quarterly budget," he said, his voice tightening. "Stop lying, Garrett. I saw you in the back booth under the palm tree. I saw you holding hands with a redhead, and I saw you touching her face. It wasn't a business meeting." The color instantly drained from Garrett's face, his confident facade completely crumbling to reveal a panicked, trapped expression. He looked around nervously, leaning in close across the table as he realized he couldn't deflect his way out of this disaster. "Look, Chloe, please, you don't understand what you saw. It's complicated," he pleaded, his hands trembling as he reached out toward her. "Don't tell me I don't understand intimacy," Chloe snapped back, drawing a hard line in the sand. "You are cheating on my best friend." "It was a mistake, a stupid mistake that is already over," Garrett stammered, trying desperately to minimize the damage. "If you tell Vanessa, it will completely destroy her. You'll ruin our marriage over a momentary lapse in judgment." "No, Garrett, you ruined your marriage the second you sat down at that table," Chloe said, her voice dripping with absolute disgust. "I am not going to carry your dirty secret for you." Garrett stared at her, his eyes wide with a mixture of panic and growing resentment. "Please, Chloe, I am begging you," he whispered, his voice cracking as he looked around the cafe. "Give me a chance to fix this myself." Chloe gripped her hands tightly in her lap to stop them from shaking, refusing to let him see how much this confrontation was tearing her apart. "You have exactly 48 hours, Garrett," she said, her voice steady and unyielding. "You sit Vanessa down, you tell her the complete truth, and you own up to what you did." Garrett nodded frantically, running a hand through his hair. "I will, I promise. Just give me the weekend to find the right moment. I don't want to blindside her." 48 hours, Garrett," Chloe repeated, standing up from the table. "If you haven't told her by Tuesday morning, I will walk over to your house and show her the photos I took myself." The next 2 days crawled by like a slow, agonizing torture for Chloe. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart jumped into her throat, expecting a devastated call from Vanessa. But Monday came and went with nothing but normal, cheerful texts from her friend about recipes and weekend plans. Chloe's anxiety reached a boiling point as the Tuesday morning deadline arrived with absolute silence from both Garrett and Vanessa. She dialed Garrett's number, but it went straight to voicemail. Realizing he had simply been buying time and trying to manipulate her into staying silent, a cold wave of resolve washed over Chloe. He wasn't going to confess, and he wasn't going to protect Vanessa from further humiliation. Chloe grabbed her car keys from the counter, her jaw set as she walked out the door. The time for waiting was officially over, and the hardest part of her journey was about to begin. The drive to Vanessa's house felt like a march toward an execution, with Chloe's hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She pulled into the driveway, staring at the familiar blue front door and wishing with every fiber of her being that she could be anywhere else in the world. When she knocked, Vanessa answered almost immediately, holding a laundry basket and wearing a bright, welcoming smile that made Chloe's heart ache. "Chloe, what a pleasant surprise! Come on in," Vanessa said, stepping aside to let her best friend enter. Chloe stepped into the living room, but she didn't sit down. She stood in the center of the rug, her arms crossed defensively over her chest. "Vanessa, can you put the basket down? We need to talk, and I need you to really listen to me," Chloe said, her voice trembling slightly despite her best efforts. Vanessa's smile faded instantly, picking up on the heavy, solemn tone in Chloe's voice as she set the laundry down on the armchair. "What's wrong? You're scaring me, Chloe. Did something happen to your family?" Vanessa asked, stepping closer with wide, anxious eyes. "No, my family is fine, but it's about Garrett," Chloe said, taking a deep breath to steady the rising panic in her own throat. She reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and opened the photo gallery before holding it out with a shaking hand. "Last Thursday night, I went to the Velvet Bistro, and I saw Garrett there with another woman," Chloe said quickly, forcing the words out before she could lose her nerve. Vanessa frowned, looking down at the screen where a clear, well-lit photo showed Garrett holding hands with the red-haired stranger under the palm tree. For a long, agonizing moment, the room fell into a suffocating, absolute silence as Vanessa stared at the image, her brain refusing to process what her eyes were seeing. "No, that's impossible. He was working late at the office," Vanessa whispered, her voice cracking as the first wave of devastating reality began to break over her. "He wasn't at the office, Vanessa. I confronted him, gave him 2 days to tell you himself, and he lied to both of us," Chloe said, her eyes welling with tears as she watched her best friend's world completely shatter. The suffocating silence in the living room suddenly ruptured into a sharp, bitter laugh as Vanessa dropped her hands to her sides. "Is this some kind of twisted joke, Chloe?" Vanessa demanded, her face flushing a deep, angry crimson as she stepped back. "Did you edit this photo? What are you trying to pull right now?" Chloe reached out, her heart breaking as she tried to comfort her grieving friend. "Vanessa, please, I would never lie to you about something this horrible. I saw them with my own eyes." "Don't touch me!" Vanessa screamed, slapping Chloe's hand away with a fierce, unexpected violence. "You've always been jealous of what Garrett and I have. You've been waiting for a chance to tear us apart." The accusation cut through Chloe like a jagged blade, making her gasp as she stumbled back a step. "How can you say that to me? I am your best friend, and I am the one standing here trying to protect you from a liar," Chloe shouted back, her own tears finally spilling over her eyelashes. "Protect me? You just walked into my home and threw a bomb into the middle of my marriage," Vanessa cried, her voice cracking into a desperate, agonizing sob. "Get out of my house, Chloe! Just get out!" Chloe opened her mouth to argue, to defend her integrity, but looking at the raw, unadulterated agony twisting Vanessa's features, she stopped herself. She recognized that this furious outburst wasn't truly directed at her. It was the desperate panic defense mechanism of a mind trying to reject a devastating reality. Saying anything more right now would only push Vanessa deeper into denial and isolation. With a heavy, aching heart, Chloe picked up her purse from the coffee table, turned her back on her weeping friend, and quietly walked out the front door. 6 agonizing days passed without a single word from Vanessa, and the silence felt heavier than any mountain. Chloe sat at her kitchen island, staring blankly at her lukewarm tea, fighting the constant urge to check her phone. She had respected Vanessa's boundary and given her space, but the anxiety of not knowing what was happening inside that house was eating her alive. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by the sharp, piercing ring of her phone vibrating across the marble countertop. Chloe lunged for it, her breath catching in her throat as Vanessa's name flashed across the digital screen. "Vanessa? Hello?" Chloe answered frantically, pressing the receiver tightly against her ear. On the other end, there was no anger, only the sound of ragged, hyperventilating breaths followed by a hollow, broken sob. "Chloe, I am so sorry," Vanessa wept, her voice trembling so violently she could barely form the syllables. "Chloe, you were right. You were completely right about him." "Oh, Vanessa, what happened? Where are you?" "I'm at home, but he's gone," Vanessa whispered, choking back another wave of tears. "After you left, I couldn't stop looking at that photo, so I waited until he was asleep and went through his iPad." Vanessa paused, taking a shaky breath as she relived the devastating moment of discovery. "There were text messages, Chloe, flight confirmations, hotel bookings. It has been going on for over 6 months with a woman from his regional branch," Vanessa confessed, her voice dropping to a numb, empty monotone. "When I confronted him with the evidence this morning, he didn't even try to deny it. He just packed a suitcase and walked out." "I'm coming over right now," Chloe said instantly, already grabbing her car keys from the hook by the door. "Please, please hurry. I don't want to be alone in this empty house."
The crisp autumn air blew a few stray golden leaves across the patio of the Daily Grind, where Chloe sat waiting at their usual corner table. It had been 4 months since the shattering explosion of Vanessa's marriage, and the healing process had been slow, painful, and messy. The glass door chimed, and Chloe looked up to see Vanessa walking toward her, wearing a soft gray sweater and a genuinely peaceful smile. She looked lighter, the dark circles under her eyes finally gone, replaced by a quiet strength that Chloe hadn't seen in a very long time. "Hey," Vanessa said softly, pulling Chloe into a long, tight hug that spoke volumes before either of them even uttered a word. "Hey yourself," Chloe smiled, squeezing her back tightly before they both sat down with their familiar coffee orders. Vanessa took a sip of her latte, looking out across the bustling street for a quiet moment before locking eyes with Chloe. "I wanted to bring you here today because the last time we sat at this table, I said things to you that I will regret for the rest of my life," Vanessa began, her voice steady and sincere. "Vanessa, you don't need to apologize," Chloe interrupted gently, reaching across the table to touch her hand. "You were hurting, and I understood that." "No, I do need to say it," Vanessa insisted, wrapping her fingers around Chloe's. "When my world fell apart, you were the only person who cared enough about me to tell me the brutal truth, even when it meant I would hate you for it." She took a deep breath, a tear tracing down her cheek, but this time it was a tear of gratitude, not grief. "The divorce was finalized this morning, and while it's the hardest thing I've ever gone through, I am finally free to rebuild my life on solid ground," Vanessa said, a bright flash of resilience in her eyes. "You saved me from a lifetime of living a lie, Chloe, and you showed me what real loyalty actually looks like." Chloe felt a warm wave of relief wash away the last remnants of the anxiety she had carried for months. They raised their coffee cups in a silent toast, cementing a bond that had been tested by fire and had emerged absolutely unbreakable.
What an emotional roller coaster. Chloe made the hardest choice a best friend can make, but in the end, her honesty saved Vanessa from a lifetime of deception. Now, I want to hear from you. Put yourself in Chloe's shoes. If you saw your best friend's partner with someone else, would you tell them right away, or would you stay out of it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. In this story, we encountered some incredibly powerful expressions for real-life problem solving. We talked about carrying an agonizing burden, handling a friend who shoots the messenger, and ultimately rebuilding life on solid ground. If you want to master these terms, make sure to check out the vocabulary guide in the description box below to practice using them in your own daily English conversations. If you enjoyed this story and want to keep improving your English listening skills while exploring deep, real-life human dramas, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Don't stop learning now. Click right here to dive into our next story, and I will see you there. Goodbye.